Welcome to the Select Board meeting for March 30th, 2021. Just as a preliminary matter, please, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Peter Carlson. I'll be chairing the meeting for tonight. Please permit me to confirm that all members anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. For Select Board members, would I please call your name? Please respond in the affirmative. Ms. DeFazio?
DeFazio, present.
Mr. Often?
I am here.
Mr. Frisbee will be delayed. Ms. Roy?
Roy here.
Peter Carlson is here. And then for staff and anticipated speakers in this agenda, when I please call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Town Administrator, Mr. Evan Broussard.
Here.
Captain Rick Elaine for Station 3.
Here.
Lieutenant Mike Corder, Station 1.
Here.
Bob Samiko for Station 3. Darb Fadavi for Station 2.
Fadavi here.
Chris Blessing for Station 1. Chief Gauthier.
Here.
Dan Elaine for Station 3. And Terry Turgeon.
Yes, here.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Town of Grafton Select Board is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of the emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings at a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted at the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature any public comment for any public hearing tonight. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by Zoom and is posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording and viewed by the public. All supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this body are available on the town's website and when our final minutes are posted, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless either chair will note otherwise. Before we get to our first item on the agenda tonight, please permit me just to cover some basic ground rules and conduct clear business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda tonight. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down a line of Select Board members, inviting each of the members, if you would raise your hand, to provide any comment, questions, or any motions. Please hold until your name is called before speaking. Please remember to mute your computer or phone when you are not speaking, and also please speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For if any votes that would be taken this evening will be done by roll call. Okay, now that's out of the way. First up, I just have a couple of announcements. I think all of us here heard about a year and a half ago, Christopher Eitri, for his act of bravery in saving Esha Patel from drowning on the night of December 13th, 2019. Just want to let the public know that Mr. Eitri has been awarded the Carnegie Medal from the Carnegie Hero Fund Commission. Details about this award are included in the weekly correspondence and will be posted on the website on Friday. Just as a COVID update, just as of March 23rd, there are currently 2,771 fully vaccinated Grafton residents and 5,325 who have received their first dose. Please note that the brush dump will be open during the week starting this Monday, April 5th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday, weather permitting. It will also be open on Saturdays from 9 to 1 p.m. weather permitting. That is all I have for, let me pull this up. I have for announcements. Is there anyone, public comments? One second here. just wanted to promote Mr. Blessing in here. Chris, this is Peter. Can you hear me okay? And are you all set to participate in the meeting? We'll get to him in a minute. Okay. Right. First up here on our agenda, we have appointment fire chief search committee members. We're bringing this forward again to make sure everyone had ample notice. I want to thank Mr. Lane for notifying us that perhaps not all members of the department received notice of the search committee and that we were seeking a representative from each one of the corresponding stations. Tonight we have members who are interested in serving. If I can, I want to go down and read your name. If you would please just introduce yourself, give a couple of comments to the board, and just give a reason why you want to serve and what you want to bring to the committee. So we're going to start with Mr. Samiko.
Sorry about that problem with the mouse. I'm Bob Shimeko, and I've been on station. I just had some dental work, so I usually don't look like that. I've been a member of Station 3 for a little over 10 years, I guess maybe 12 years. And before that, worked in the emergency services, heavy rescue down in New Jersey. I'm a government guy. I've been state, local, municipal, nonprofit. And the thing I'm most concerned about, and the reason I want to be on the selection committee, is because of the volunteer department that we have. I think that somebody with the right leadership, the right experience, can really continue to keep this department very strong. And I think that that's really the critical aspect that I'm concerned about, that you get somebody with, believing that the only possible way to go is with a transition to a full-time department. And certainly in where I'm from in the New York area, a great majority of departments surrounding New York City, Long Island, New Jersey, New York, maintain volunteer departments, entirely volunteer departments. And we realize that there's, issues with hiring, et cetera, across the country, maintaining firefighters. But I believe that both to the service of the taxpayers and saving money, as well as to continue a professional department, and volunteerism is really important. So that's the aspect of the fire service. On the government side, I've hired a lot of people. I have a really great, I think, good track record. The office that I work with, I've hired quite a few folks, and I have a really wonderful staff. And I really go with my gut. I've been on search committees before, so I felt that, to do a service to the community, that, I would be a good candidate to at least put my name in.
Thank you very much. We'll go down the next list here. I haven't, just in the list that I was given to me order, Mr. Fadavi from Station 2.
Hi, I'm Dar Fadavi. I've been on the Grafton Fire Department for a little over 9 years now. I'm a fire protection engineer, which means I interact with a lot of different fire departments on a day-to-day basis on what they do for buildings, what they do for pre-plans, and other components. I want to be on the committee because I do believe that Grafton has a great call department, and that call/volunteer department is a real strength for our community. Not only with the volunteering, like Bob mentioned, but money-wise as well. And I think I'd be a great asset for the search committee as well, with my background in fire protection and dealing with other departments as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fadavi. Next up, we have Mr. Lane for Station 3.
Which one?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. I'm sorry, you, Captain Lane. I should have said Captain Lane. You wouldn't know who I'm talking about. I'm sorry. Rick
Lane, Grafton Fire Department, Station number 3, Captain. I put my name in to make sure that we had representation. I was glad that you chose to go with a representative from each station, even though we have to keep in mind that we are one fire department. I mean, that's one thing that gets overseen through the town because we have 3 stations and different personnel at each station. We are one fire department. And that's a big part of this whole search for a chief. We are going forward to somewhere we've never been before. The town of Grafton is going to go out and get a strong chief. I have served under 5 chiefs since I've been on in my almost 48 years, and many deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs, and we've all worked very well together. They all came from town. Okay, this is a whole new ball game for us. We still have the possibility of someone coming from town, but there's a lot of us that are getting up in age, and as the chief retires, this is going to be a big change for the town of Grafton. We need to find the right fit. We need to find someone, especially if he's from out of town, that's going to learn the town ways, the ways we do things, and accept that our call department is, like Davey said, and Bob, we have a phenomenal call department. And that's hats off to the former chiefs that I've worked under, as well as Chief Gauthier for the last 19 years, is keeping this the best call fire department that we can possibly be. We need to follow that plan. We have to make sure that the new chief coming in understands the strong chief aspect of running the department, as well as keeping the guys, retaining and recruiting and bringing guys together. We don't have the membership we used to have years ago when we were all available most of the days. We worked one job. Our wives or significant others stayed home with our kids while we were out fighting fires. Today, a lot of our guys are home babysitting because their wives work opposite them. They can't respond to a fire. So we have to maintain the right numbers, the right returns, and how we respond to these fire calls, all the calls that we get, and make sure that we get the right fit. That is so important, that we get the right fit for our community to start off with this whole new aspect of going forward.
All right. Thank you. Next up, Dan Elaine from Station 3.
Yeah, so I've grew up in Grafton as well, and I've lived here my whole life. I'm now on Station 3.
Dan, I'm so sorry to cut you off here. The reason I'm doing that is I can barely hear you in your audio. Could you take just a few moments to get that adjusted?
I'll do my best. Hold on.
Thank you.
How about now?
No, it's still pretty faint. Yeah, if you probably want to exit the meeting and come back in, I can move on and then we can come back to you, okay?
How about now?
Oh, perfect. There you go. You got
There
it.
we go. Just had to switch headsets. No problem. Technology. Yep. So I've lived in Grafton my whole life, just like Captain Elaine and Bob's been on the department for 15 years. I think we both share the same, all of us pretty much going to share the same interests. We all have the same vision and view for the fire department and what we want to see going forward. And, I was on the fire study committee along with Captain Elaine and Bob as well. So we all kind of understand what we were gearing towards with the committee as well. I think the main difference that I would have, other than those two would have for Station 3, would be just long term. I'm going to be on the department longer, so I have a little bit more of a vested interest in that part as well. For myself, as somebody that just joined the department, I got at least another 20 something years to go, so I would have to also be with the new chief as well going forward for a longer period of time. So that would be kind of the vested interest for me as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up here, we have Lieutenant Corda from Station 1.
Good evening. Lieutenant Mike Corda from Station 1. And I just recently got on the fire department 36 years ago. So I have some longevity and vested interest in the department. Like my other brothers, on the panel here. I'd like to see a chief that is going to take us into the future, but not lose the respect that we've had for years of the volunteer department and the dedication and the commitment from all our members. That cannot be forgotten. And I just want to see a smooth transition. A little bit of background. I'm also a commissioner on the Grafton Water District. I was a district manager at Pepsi Cola for 3 years. I do have a good management background too. So that's basically what I'm looking for. And hopefully that we can find that right person, the right fit for our town. This is a precious department, and I don't want to see it go sour by any means. And that's about it.
All right, thank you. We have Chris Blessing from Station 1 as well.
Good evening, Chris Blessing, Station 1. I've served in Grafton for 11 years, also a career firefighter EMT in town of Wellesley. I hope to bring to the table a different aspect, having the career side too. I've had a lot of fun in 11 years with Grafton, and I would hate to see the wrong candidate be chosen. And like everyone else is saying, tarnish our reputation. As also being only 31, I still have another at least 25 years to go. So as Daniel was saying, longevity is important to me. I also own a landscaping company in town. I've hired, fired, went through countless application process, understand the whole process the last couple of years. So I just hope to bring a different aspect to this committee.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Blessing. All right, I want to thank for all the candidates coming in here. At this time, I want to open up discussion with the board. If the board has any questions for any of the candidates or all of the candidates, we can go through that right now if you'd like. Does anyone have any thoughts or any questions? Well, I do have a question. Captain Elaine, how many years have you served in command now for Grafton Fire Department? You started off as a lieutenant and then you worked your way up to captain. Can you give a little history on that over your 48 years?
I started off as an auxiliary member, and I think I was the longest serving auxiliary member on the department. And then as a firefighter, rescue, all the way up, lieutenant, second lieutenant, first lieutenant. Lieutenants are the same. Lieutenant's a lieutenant. It's just when we were appointed. So it's first and second lieutenant and then captain. So let's see. Chief Gothy has been on almost 20 years as a chief. I lose track. I'm trying to look back. I would say I replaced Chief Barker when he went up. So I would say 15 years as captain and another 7 years as lieutenant.
Thank you. And if it's okay, Lieutenant Corda, could you answer that same question for me?
Yes, and just like Ricky, started off as auxiliary and then firefighter, and then dates sometimes elude me, but I've been a lieutenant for at least 15 plus years up at Station 1. And again, first lieutenant, second lieutenant, doesn't matter. We all work as a team. So yeah.
All right. Okay, that's all the questions I had. Any of the board members have any questions? Okay, all right. I think at this point, so tonight we want to appoint a representative from Station 1, Station 2, and Station 3. Does anyone want to start off with a motion for Station 1? Ms. Roy.
Can I start with Station 2?
You're going out of my order. I don't know.
I know.
All right, go ahead.
All right, I move the board vote to appoint Darby Fadavi to the Fire Chief Search Committee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Mr. Fadavi to the search committee. Is there any discussion on that motion? I see Mr. Prisby has joined us, please, for the record at before 7:19. Is there any discussion on that motion? I'm seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Mr. Prisby.
Prisby, aye.
All right, declare Carlson, I declare the motion carried 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Fadavi, coming in. Appreciate it. Good luck. Appreciate
Thank
your willingness and serve. All right, next up, do we want to hit station 1, station 3? There's only 2 left. Who wants to go first? Mr. Fazio.
I'll start the conversation by saying that I really appreciated that everybody had mentioned the importance of continuing the volunteer department, and specifically, how critical the retention and recruitment is to this department. And so I just wanted to mention that I heard that in what everybody said, and I am thrilled about that, because I think that is going to be really key for us picking the next chief. So I'm just kind of throwing this out to the board. Do we want to perhaps have different ranks on this committee so that everybody else gets a voice, and that's how we're choosing, or does somebody have someone in mind? Because I like everybody as a choice, so I could just throw a name out there, but I just didn't know if we wanted to be a little more, go by ranks and choose maybe a captain, a lieutenant, or someone who has longevity, because that was discussed too. So if we have someone who's going to be remaining on the fire department longer, I just think that maybe that's something that we could discuss as a board and then kind of make the decision for the next 2 appointments.
That's a great question. We didn't really specify in our charge as to, ranks. We were just looking for representation from each, station, to your point. But Mr. Often, you had your hand up. You wanted to discuss this as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of rank, I would think about it. Maybe diversity and rank would be good, but diversity and sort of perspective and skills, time in the department, maybe. I think we should definitely have some younger representation on it. And particularly, we've got a couple of members, Mr. Samiko, and a couple of the others that have worked with multiple departments. I think having that outside perspective and that broader perspective probably is something that I'd be interested in on this screening committee as well.
Any other questions or comments to just select board right now, Mr. Lane? Ms. Roy, Ed, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I'm good. I'm just listening.
Okay. One of the things I want to mention, I think it's crucial that we have some command structure on this search committee. I think, to your point, Mr. Fazio, that's a great question. Do we want diversity? To Mr. Often's point, I know both Mr. Corder and Mr. Lane for many, many years, and I think either one of them would do a fantastic job. And if that's what it came down to, if we wanted to pick, one officer over the other, I'm going to have a very hard time picking one over the other. I'm super encouraged with the thoughtfulness of the responses from each one of the members tonight, as well as to serving on this committee. But if you're, if you're looking to have one officer, great, and then another, just a rank and firefighter, I think that's a reasonable approach to this. I do believe having, even having 2 members of the command structure on here too, I think is crucial. They're going to be so instrumental in transition as well with this department. So I think there's a lot to consider here. But yeah, I would be perfectly fine with one command and then one other firefighter if that's the case. We have Mr. Fadavi, who's from Station 2 already appointed. So what's the board's wish at this point? Is there any direction that it wants to go with either station at this point? Wants to make a motion? Ms. Roy.
So I'll make a motion for the board to appoint Michael Corda to the Fire Chief Search Committee.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded to appoint Mr. Corda to the Fire Chief Search Committee. Is there any question or any discussion on that motion from the board?
I just wanted to add that the reason I went that direction is he made one comment about taking us into the future while preserving on-call, and I wrote it down and it stuck out to me. So, I mean, you guys are all great candidates. This is not fun to do.
I agree. Any other comments or discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Mr. Frisbee,
Frisbee, aye.
and Peter Carlson, aye. Okay, declare the motion carried unanimous 5-0. Thank you, Lieutenant Corda. All right, and last up, we have Station 3. We have Captain Elaine, we have Dan Elaine, we have Bob Shimiko here tonight from Station 3. Does our board have any discussion on Station 3 or direction that it would like to go into? Mr. Often.
So I like Bob Shimiko's kind of outside experience. I think he's got a lot of, he mentioned that he's been on search committees before. I liked his sort of comments about being concerned about town finances, and he does, is a kind of a government guy, so gets the ins and outs of hiring and the municipal process and all that. So I thought he was a good, strong candidate for that station.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I'll just tell the board, I've had the pleasure of serving with all three of them on the Fire Study Committee. We worked over a year, almost 2 meetings a month in some cases, and I would say that either one of the choices would be perfect tonight for us. And again, this is very, very difficult for us to do. You got to pick between 1 out of 3. And like I said, I would support any one of those candidates tonight, who I think would do a fantastic job in bringing the department into the future while maintaining that, the call status. I think something that stuck out to me very much, and maintaining that structure as well. I think that's the future of our department for the foreseeable future. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on appointment from Station 3? If not, I can entertain a motion from any of the board members if they're ready.
I'll make a motion. We appoint Bob Shimiko to the Fire Chief Search Committee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Mr. Shimiko to the Search Committee for Station 3. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio,
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Mr. Frisbee,
Frisbee, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Before we exit, I just wanted to remind the committee in the audience today that Brian Hero from Station 2 withdrew his interest in a letter, and just wanted to let everyone know that due to scheduling conflicts, he felt that it would be best if another member from Station 2 were to take his place. So just so everyone's aware of that. But before we go, Mr. Lane, I know you had your hand up. Did you have a question for the board before we conclude the appointment business?
No, it wasn't a question. I just wanted to point out that the majority of the fire department, firefighters and lieutenants and captains and chiefs as well, it is a blessing to the fire department and the town of our longevity here. And the reason why people are still firefighters, but very capable of being lieutenants and captains. They're just no positions because we stay on, and we stay on a long time. So some of those roles never get filled, and everyone here is deserving of those type of positions: lieutenant captains, assistant chiefs, deputy chiefs. They all have the capabilities of commanding a scene. The good majority of our department does. So hats off to Chief Garthia, hats off to the town of Grafton for having the type of department that we have, because we respect our guys. Whoever's first on scene takes command and can transfer that command over. So I just wanted to make a point out that just because we have officers and we have people like that, because of the structure we're in, guys just don't get to get that position all the way up until their retirement. We have guys that have retired that could have been captains, chiefs, everything, but they became 65 years old, were on many, many years, and got off only because, as a firefighter, only because there was never an opening for them.
Just we appreciate that, Mr. Lane. And I know I speak on behalf of this town. We are grateful for our fire department and all of the longevity and the experience. And I couldn't agree more. I think, the longevity of the command staff here and all of the members, I believe, we have one of the best departments in the area. And it's a testament to your all's participation and your support and this town's support at the same time. Thank you for those comments. Is there any other questions or comments before we conclude this part of the business and move on to the agenda for search firms? I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We appreciate it. For those committee members, I will set up a meeting in the future to formally organize you with your charge. And we'll be seeing that in the next week or two. So please be on the lookout for an email from myself. I'll be at the first meeting. Once you're organized, I will exit from that meeting and you guys will run your search process from there on out with its members. Okay, thank you very much for coming in, everybody. Have a great evening. Okay, next up on our agenda, we have we have a couple of search firms tonight. I know some of the board members may have some questions. I put this on the agenda tonight, so I will open this up right now. Mr. Broussard, you've got us with 3 providers here, Community Paradigm Associates, which we know, another firm by the name of John Jack Parrow out of Chelmsford, and then
no, that's actually one of the members of, yes. So it's MRI out of New Hampshire, and it is Community Paradigm, as well as Badge Quest was the third one that I was able to pull.
Thank you. So Mr. Broussard, is there anything you want to just inform the board just on the 3 firms? If not, we can just go into questions from some of the firms from the board members. I know we've had this in our packet now for a little bit. Is there anything you want to give us?
So what I tried to do with all 3 firms was to create some parity between the processes. Everybody has kind of their own little ways to do different things. But I asked for pricing on the recruitment and search firm and that hiring process, but also the assessment center, which is an option that you can choose, and then also the background check. So you'll see that same theme. Some of them have different amounts for if you went over or you had something else mid-process that you asked for. But by and large, they should be a pretty comparable package. In my review, MRI is clearly the lowest cost. I think that, that's also not interesting, but there's also some connection there since they did your study as well. And we're familiar with what I was talking about when I was speaking with the representatives. Paradigm, you also obviously know. And I reached out to Badge Quest. I have a very good friend that was hired for the town of Oxford using that firm, and spoke very highly of the process that he went through. So I thought they would be a good selection as well. Lastly, just as a matter of transparency, MRI hired me to work in Munson, and Community Paradigm hired me to work in Grafton. So, it's Massachusetts, so there's only so many places you can go, but just to be clear.
It's a small community.
It is.
Before we get into discussion or questions from the boards, I do have one. Could you perhaps explain to, I think the board knows what this is, but perhaps the general public, just can you describe what the assessment center component is of these search firms, and what does that entail? And what does that tell us?
Sure. So when you get closer to your candidates, your final candidates, and normally that's when you get down to your 3 or 4 top picks, they'll go through what these firms call an assessment center, which is basically a standardized test that all the candidates will take, and then you'll be able to rank candidates as far as performance on the test. So it's basic knowledge or background knowledge that a chief would need. All of these firms have created their own tests, but basically, they take, I know that in speaking to some of them, they take some of the curriculum that you do at the Chiefs course in Stowe or through Mass Fire Academy. And then, just general leadership, administration, as well as staff management questions. And they put all that together, do an assessment, and then that should give you an idea of the knowledge of your candidate.
Thank you. All right.
Go
ahead.
One other thing. You don't have to do that. Some communities opt to do it. Some communities don't. But it is an option that I think, you need to know exists.
All right. Any questions from the board? Ms. Roy?
So the assessment test did stand out to me when I was looking at the costs. MRI didn't really break it out individually. So is their assessment test built into their 3 tiers? So it's not an additional cost.
Right.
And is there a difference between a virtual assessment versus an in-person assessment?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I've never seen the virtual assessment. I believe the virtual assessment is the same as the in-person, except online. And so they'll do, the oral or interview process is done via Zoom as opposed to, them coming out here or meeting each of the chiefs. I believe that was the only difference. That's the only difference I could tell.
Any other questions on the board? So I think, just real quick, Mr. Prasad, so the summary here is I have, just for the board's consideration, I have Community Paradigm Associates, which is $11,000 with $2,700 payable at each conclusion of each phase of the step, which are 4 phases. And then there's an additional cost for the Optional Assessment Center, which would be an additional $5,500. Is it the total cost for Paradigm going to be $16,500 if the board considers both the basic services and the assessment?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess from a comparative nature, just to confirm, was it Badge Quest? Pulling that up here.
They should be about $20,000 roughly.
Right. So their recruitment services is $10,995 for the recruitment services, $6,800 for the assessment center of 1 to 5 candidates, but they'll reduce that by $400 if they do the recruitment services for the $10,995. And then the background investigations estimated by $3,000. So that one's approximately 20 with the reduction.
Yes.
Okay. And last but not least, this is MRI, and this was the least expensive one in total for the services with the assessment center.
Yeah, it's about $14,500.
All right, great. In each one of these assessment centers will evaluate up to 1 to 5 candidates. So they are pretty, there's parity across all 3 of the proposals.
I don't know how many MRI included in theirs, top of mind, but you're likely not going to send 5. Most of the time, you're going to send 3.
Right.
Would be I think that's what the board or the committee should be looking at.
Well, MRI says they'll send the profile instrument for up to the top 2 to 3 candidates. So their limit would be 3.
Yes.
2 minimum 3. Ours is looking at, I think, a total of 3 for our charge. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I don't have any other questions. Does the board have any other questions with regarding to the search firms? Ms. Roy?
Not a question as much as a comment. Something that stood out to me with MRI was how they limited how many times they were going to meet with the search committee. And I didn't love that. You don't know how much you're going to need to meet with people or what schedules are going to look like. And if you're already limiting your access, that stood out to me as a red flag.
That's a good point. Okay. Any other questions, observations, or comments from the board, Mr. DeFazio?
Yeah, just another comment. I'm tending to lead toward community paradigm just because I feel, based on the experience that they've recently had with the town, that they already have a good understanding of Grafton, because they just found us a town administrator, and they can kind of use that assessment to then move forward in finding us the next fire chief. And so, Mr. Prisby and the rest of the screening committee seem to have a good relationship with them. They have a lot of experience, and it worked out really well for us. And having Evan join us. So I think that they would be, they're a little more expensive than MRI. And, I know MRI did the report as well, but I had the same concerns as Colleen as far as limiting the amount of time we have. And, as we navigate through our time frame too, we're going to need a little bit of flexibility there. So they would be my first choice. But I'm saying that because I don't really know a lot about Badge Quest as well. I'm sure they're great. I'm thinking of going with the people who have, done right by Grafton already once. So.
Thank you. Before you go, Mr. Frisbee, just a question. When you were on the TI search committee, and could you tell us roughly how many times you had meetings with Paradigm Associates?
Let me think. We met once, I think, in September, a couple times in October. I think we had a meeting with you guys, and then we did at least 2 rounds of cut downs on the resumes, and then we met 3 more times doing the interviews. So, what's that? Somewhere 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that.
I think I'm up to about 9 right now. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good. No, thank you. Mr. Austin?
Sure. I agree with sort of not going with MRI for some of the similar comments that were made. I was leaning more towards Badge Quest because they're specialists in public safety hiring. And as I look through their process and I look through the references that they have that they've hired recently, it looks really impressive to me. And it just seems to me to bring in a firm that really specializes in public safety and has brought in a lot of lieutenants, captains, fire chiefs, and deputy chiefs. I thought that was, it would be worth spending a little bit extra money to bring in a firm that really is 100% focused just on fire and police. I think that's, it's a very specialized position. We're looking for a candidate that has very specific skills in terms of managing a hybrid department and maintaining that hybrid department over time. This is, aside from the town administrator, probably the most important hire that Grafton's going to make in quite some time. So I think it's worth spending some money on specialists that really, this is all they do.
Any other questions, Ms. Roy?
This is for Evan. When you spoke to each of these consultants, did you give them any kind of idea of our time frame? I'm just curious if Paradigm picked their time frame to line up with what we'd already put in motion, or if okay, so they did that intentionally.
They did that intentionally.
If they had had more time, do you think they would have come to that same conclusion, or do you think it would have been closer to what Badge Quest said with a 4 to 5 months?
I would think it would be closer to what Badge Quest said. I think Mr. Lynch, we had a conversation and he tried to tailor it as best he could with what he already has, in the pipeline to get us close to the outcome. So.
Mr. Austin.
So I think it's important for us to take our time with this hiring process, and we can talk about it later on. But I think, we need to make sure that we give this process the time that it deserves, and that it's not rushed in any way. And so I think, our timing in part should be based on the timing that is recommended by the actual firm that we're using, as opposed to us driving the timeline on it. Because I think any kind of artificial timeline that we put on it is just going to limit our candidate pool. And that's going to be one of my most important considerations in terms of, how we go through this process generally. similar to, what we went through with the town administrator. Just that overarching concern is making sure that we make the right hire. And so it'll take the time that it takes.
All right, any other questions or comments from the board? Ms. Roy?
When it comes to paying for this, do we have $20,000 if we were to go that route, or should we be tailoring it to fit a dollar amount that you have budgeted?
So obviously it depends on the timeline we're talking about. If I can put it into a budget to have the monies available July 1, I can make that work. If I have to do something to be able to adjust things at the special to pay for it, let me back up. I can make anything work. So I'd rather personally have the board pick the firm that it wants and then tell me to figure it out. Then, you nickel and dime yourselves into a process that you don't like.
Okay, and that's a great question. Any other questions from the board? So I'm in alignment with my board as well, Mr. Broussard. So I would dare say between BadgeQuest and Paradigm Associates, I think either one, if I were to lean towards something, I would lean towards Paradigm Associates just because of the costs, and we know how they work already. So we know the process that we can expect. That's just my thought, but I'm not opposed to going with somebody new, even if it's for a few $1,000s more. To your point, Mr. Often, on looking at someone who just specializes in just searching for public safety positions within communities. So, if what I'm hearing tonight, does the board want to wait and bring this back at a future meeting? What's the wish? Do you want to make a decision tonight?
I'll make a motion and see what happens if you want.
All right, Ms. Roy.
All right, I move the board vote to hire BadgeQuest to serve as the fire chief search firm to authorize up to $20,400 and enter into a contract in the amount of $20,400. Authorize Evan Broussard to enter into a contract with them in the amount of $20,400 with work to be completed by the time it is completed. I don't have an answer for that last part.
I'll second that.
We'll second that. Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? So essentially tonight, what we're deciding on is BadgeQuest with a dollar amount to perform the services. If there isn't any further discussion on BadgeQuest, on the motion on the floor, I can go into a roll call vote, in which case we'll start with Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Mr. Prisby?
Frisbee, aye.
All right, Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Okay. All right, Mr. Broussard, get that squared away. That'd be great. All right.
Will do.
Next up, thank you very much for doing all of that for us and putting that together. Appreciate it. Next up, we have an appointment tonight for Disability Commission. First of all, I'm very happy to see Ms. Turgeon back here in her interest to serve on the committee. I know you were here before answering questions from the board. If you want, did you want to give a just a quick overview, restate your interest to us, and give a couple of comments, and we can go ahead and either ask questions or go into a motion.
That sounds good, Peter. Thank you for having me. Just to start off, I want to say, as a member just watching, I've learned more about the fire department in this town. So thank you guys for all the work that you do. My name is Terry Turgeon. I've lived in Grafton for 24 years. Part of your charge, I'm sure you know, because you said it, is that people that serve on the Disability Commission either have in their lived experience a member of their immediate family for whom has a disability, for which that applies to me. My daughter's 25 and has a disability, as well as other members of my family, but that's sort of my lived experience, as well as in my professional life, or has a disability themselves. I'm a former member of the Grafton School Committee. I served from 2007 until 2017. I know what a committee work looks like, and I'm really interested in getting back involved again. I was a former member of the Grafton Special Education Parent Advisory Council, co-creator of Everyday Heroes, and a past recipient of that, Everyday Heroes. In my professional life, I'm a leader in low incidence disabilities. I work for Perkins School for the Blind. I supervise and oversee services to 1,200 blind and low vision kids who attend public schools in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. Prior to working at Perkins, I was a special education advocate. I've always been passionate about advocating for the needs of people with disabilities, whether it be children when I was on the school committee or with adults. And really, when you look at what the charge is of the Disability Commission, I think that we can all sort of start off by saying that accessibility is good for everyone, not just people with disabilities. You know, it's good for grandmothers who don't have disabilities but need easy access in. It's good for mothers pushing baby carriages who need access to the beach, and that carpet gives them better access to that. It's good for people with disabilities as well. And I think it makes all of our work better as a town. The charge really is to ensure that residents of the town of Grafton for whom have disabilities have full and equal access to participate in the full life of town, whatever that looks like. And in 2019, Grafton underwent self-study and has a transition plan that they've been working off of. And I've studied it. I've read the 152-page document. I familiarized myself with it, as well as the transition plan, which really is a working plan. And if members of the public actually wanted to read it, it's really quite interesting because it really hits on all the municipal buildings, as well as the libraries, including Nelson, South Grafton Center, police, fire, and recreational facilities. It does not necessarily hit on school facilities. And in fact, when I was reading the minutes, I saw that unfortunately Grafton did not qualify for a recent grant, which would have helped them study facilities in Grafton public schools. Transition plan really is a working plan. It helps the town to identify what the obstacles are. It gives a description about what types of actions might be needed to eliminate the obstacles. It prioritizes them in a 1 through 4 so that you can kind of get a sense for what's ahead of you. It talks about the feasibility of the removal and gives them a ranked option, establishes dates in terms of achieving the accessibility, what the time frame will be. It gives the associated costs, and it talks about who the party responsible. And the work of the committee already, just reading through their minutes to date, they've done an incredible amount of work. I mean, Matt, you've taken that incredible document, all of that data and analytics, and my understanding, put it into sort of a Gantt chart, for lack of a better term, because it's so overwhelming when you first look at it. You pick off the low-hanging fruit. Do departments have a budget that's associated with picking off these things? Do they know themselves what the priorities are in terms of the town? And it's even bigger than all of that. It's creating policies and procedures that provide for full participation. And I as a little just sort of a pilot, went on and looked at the meeting invitation for tonight. We don't have necessarily a place for when people need accommodations to participate in this type of life of town. We don't necessarily have a way to do that. We don't have a place that says, if you need accommodations or accessibility to participate here, or closed captioning or whatnot, there's no place to sort of help our residents sort of figure that out. So there's still lots of work to do. I think I have something to add to the committee, and I would be appreciative if you would appoint me to it to fulfill a term that ends in June of 2022. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Turgeon. I was just going to ask that. Does the board have any questions tonight? Mr. Fazio.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Terry, you absolutely amazed me with your experience and all. It always amazes me when people come forward with such a busy life, as is. You're helping so many people every day and have been for such a long time, and have an incredible amount of knowledge in this particular subject that stems from your daughter, really, at first. And I am just so grateful for you for then again applying to be appointed on the committee to help our town. It's extraordinary, and I can't thank you enough, because this town needs you. The residents need you. There are things that I could spend so much time looking and diving into that I will just never have the experience that you have. And we need people like you to step up, and you continue to do so. And so thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Doreen.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Mr. Often.
Yeah, so Terry, your resume is impeccable. I think your life experience is impeccable as well. And I hear the passion and the the knowledge that you bring to the table. If you're appointed to the commission, which I happen to be on as the select board rep, I will wholeheartedly embrace you into the commission and work with you. I do have to say though that based on some interactions that the board had earlier in the year in 2020 with our sort of chat feature on the board, I'd like to just, I guess it would be remiss for me to not at least discuss it with the board in terms of not the skill set, because I think you have the skill set, you have the knowledge. I very deeply appreciate all of the work that you've done for the town, but I do have a little bit of a concern in terms of, we got some, what I would consider inappropriate comments in some of the chat features, which I felt a little bit harassed by. And I said that in one of our meetings and I meant it. I guess I just would like to give you an opportunity to kind of address that and also find out if, the rest of the board has any thoughts on that. And, like I said, if you're appointed, I will wholeheartedly welcome you and work with you.
Absolutely. Peter, do you want me to address that?
If you wish.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess what I would say to you is, and Matt, you and I spoke privately by phone so you could share your concerns with me and we talked about it. And so in my opinion, in many ways, that was water under the bridge after that. You guys decided as a board to shut off the chat feature and have people come on live. I would say to you that if you're sitting on this side of the camera versus where you sit, public participation during COVID has been really hard. It's different and unlike anything I've ever experienced before, having been a chair, having served for 10 years, and it's really challenging. And, I think people who know me know that I kind of have a fire in my belly and I'm opinionated and I'm going to state my mind, and that's not going to change. It's not going to change if you appoint me to this position, just who I am. It's who I am at my core. I would actually be betraying myself if I wasn't like that. But I feel like, Matt, you and I talked about it. And as far as I was concerned, that was sort of water under the bridge. And we haven't had, I don't think, any issues since then. So for me, it's, part of public service is that there are going to be times when I disagree with someone, but I have to work with everyone that sits at the table. And I think that you do as well.
Okay, thanks for that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Prisby?
Yeah, with due respect, I'm going to be a no on this, and I'll tell you why. And I frankly think you just heard it. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the Terry Turgeon that I just heard speak for 5 minutes straight, eloquently about people with disabilities and the work that needs to be done in Grafton, that's the kind of person that I would want to have on this committee. Unfortunately, what was just confirmed for me was the kind of person we're going to get in the committee was the one that we had to silence in the chat session, and it became like the impetus for a policy change. When we were talking about how we were going to work through meetings during COVID, it's not hard. Public participation is actually the highest that it's been in the year that we've been doing this by Zoom. I can check it right now. There are 21 participants, there are 11 attendees. 11 is actually a low number for us. Usually before this, it was basically Colleen showing up to the meetings and sitting in the back. The duty that we have in appointing people to committees is, as Craig Doffney once put it, to make sure the best of Grafton is reflected in our committees. I have absolutely no doubt that substantively Terry would be perfect for this. My worry is that this is the sort of thing where when people feel harassed and belittled and the experience is negative and being on a committee, they don't want to do it again. You know, time to pull papers for my spot ran out tonight. I didn't pull papers. Only one other person did. And I didn't want to do it because the experience has been in part kind of negative, to be perfectly honest with you. And other people don't want to do it because I've had people tell me, you know, we looked at what you went through, Prisby. We don't want to do it either. And it's like this sort of thing that I just, you know, when the back and forth, it's one thing to be opinionated. It's another thing to get a little bit abusive about it. And I can't get down with it. So I'm a no.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Fazio.
Yeah, I just want to follow up because I'm not changing my mind or opinion about Ms. Turgeon. I you know, she knows how to act professionally and responsibly on board. She's proved that again and again as, you know, a school committee member for a long time and other committees that she's been on in the department. And, you know, it is hard to do anything in public office, you know, and are there times that I feel harassed or belittled? Absolutely. And I think it kind of, you know, goes with the territory. And, you know, that's why you have a chair of a committee to manage the committee well. And you know, if Terry says something out of line in a meeting, I would hope that it would be addressed, and just like it is in any other committee or board in this town. And so I think that we are not going to find another person who would bring such value to this commission. And that's what my eye is on is, you know, how can we better Grafton, not how can we, you know, make sure that a person is behaving themselves on a committee. And so, you know, can I promise that Terry won't have an outburst if she's on the Disability Commission? No, I can't. But I also think that she would offer a lot of really great time and resources and opinions that would matter and help the people who need it in this town. So I am in favor of her being on this commission for that reason.
Any other questions or comments on the board? Ms. Roy.
So I listened to everyone tonight, and I'm just going to go off of what Doreen just said, where she said she can't promise there won't be an outburst. And I can't say we've ever had that discussion around an appointment before that it was even a question that there would be an outburst. And that gives me pause and some concern that are we doing the committee a disservice by appointing someone who might be volatile enough to have an outburst? I don't know. Makes me concerned.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Could I say something, Peter?
I would like to weigh in for 1 minute.
Of course.
I haven't said one thing yet.
Of course.
It's no secret. I've served with Ms. Turgeon for a number of years on the school committee, served with distinction. I would agree that Ms. Turgeon has a fire in her about her passions, and that around disability. I probably know maybe one or two other people in this community. I'm sure there are more, but I don't know them personally yet, that advocate for disabilities. Whereas I was chair, you know, during some of those remarks and some of those things that occurred, and I wasn't a fan of them. I have to say to myself, you know, hey, that was yesterday. You know, I'm looking at tomorrow right now. I see someone who has not stepped up once, but now twice to this committee. I believe Ms. Turgeon would serve with distinction and would be a huge asset to furthering the agenda, the objectives of the Disability Commission for the town of Grafton, because I've seen her in action when it comes to disabilities within our public school systems. So I would be in favor of her serving. I would ask, you know, Ms. Turgeon, if you have, you know, personal gripes about one of us, that, you know, you address it with us personally. And I know that this is a public meeting, and I know that we can invite people to come in and speak publicly at times, and we still do. We do permit it now. We don't allow the chat section, And I will say that it's been working well. I would encourage you to come to our meetings if there's something on the agenda that you would like to attend. Raise your hand. I know sometimes we don't see it right away, so I know the public is after me to be completely vigilant on that, and that's on me as chair. But I would, I'd be in favor of seeing you serve on this commission tonight, like Mr. Often had said, and I know you'd be a huge asset for this town. Ms. Turgeon, did you want to respond to anything before I ask the board to make a motion?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Does the board want to, I'll entertain a motion right now from the board.
I move the board vote to appoint Terry Turgeon to the Disability Commission for a term set to expire on June 30th, 2022.
Second.
Motion made and second. Is there any discussion on the motion of appointment? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often nay.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, nay.
Mr. Frisbee? Carlson's a yay. Unfortunately, I declare the motion defeated 3-2. Thank you for coming in tonight, Ms. Turgeon, for addressing the committee. We appreciate your willingness to come and serve, but the board's decision tonight is to not appoint. All right. Thank you. All right, moving on to our agenda tonight. We have a few appointments here from the town administrator. First up, we have Human Resources Analyst, Krista, is it Merritt or Moreau?
Marat.
Marat, thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Broussard, do you want to give some background?
Sure. So Krista applied for our position of HR analyst. She comes to us with about 20 years of experience in HR, payroll, as well as benefits administration, which is exactly what we're looking for. And 20 of those years is in Harper's, which is the system that we use here. And she's able to start with us on April 12th.
Any questions or comments from the board? All right, seeing that, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to affirm the appointment of Krista Marat to the position of Human Resource Analyst.
Second.
Motion made and seconded for the appointment for Human Resource Analyst. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Frisbee.
No, just Peter, I just want to point out for the people watching at home, this is another one of these moves that's being made. It's sometimes it's subtle, it flies under the radar. But these are the little changes that we're making in the operation of town government when changes were made last summer and got a lot of play online and a lot of commentary online. I just want to point out that we're moving in the right direction here, and this is important. This is important stuff.
All right, any other questions or comments on the motion for appointment? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Mr. Frisbee? Peter Carlson, aye. Mr. Frisbee, were you yay on that?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. I declare the motion carried 5-0. Next up, Mr. Broussard, we have Assistant Treasurer Collector Thomas Maroulie.
Yes, so Thomas comes to us from another neighboring community where he's doing the same work already. He has a bachelor's in political science and international relations from Westfield State, and he's currently enrolled and working towards his MCTA collector certification. We did the interview process. He was head and shoulders the candidate and would like to get that position filled and move forward.
All right, any questions on the appointment for Mr. Broussard for Assistant Treasurer Collector from the board? All right, seeing none, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to affirm the appointment of Thomas Maroulie to the position of Assistant Treasurer Collector.
Second.
Motion made and seconded for the appointment of Assistant Treasurer Collector. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried 5-0. And last up, we have a temporary hire here for local building inspector, Ronald DeSantis. Mr. Broussard, do you want to give just a background about this appointment?
Yeah, so I met with Inspector or Mr. Berger, And we've had a tremendously high amount of permit requests and plan reviews. And that coupled with, pandemic stuff and enforcements and, moving everything over to Viewpoint, we just started to slip behind. And I think there was some conversation publicly as well as privately about our ability to get these plans out in a timely manner. And so we made the decision to move forward with Mr. DeSantis for a short period of time to get some of these plan reviews out the door and get the department caught back up so that we're on the right side of our plan reviews and the residents are getting a timely response.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions on this temporary appointment tonight for Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I consider to be good news for Grafton that we have so much going on in the way of development and plan reviews and permitting and all of that. That indicates the robust level of development that's happening in town. I don't think the public maybe appreciate the breadth of projects that are in progress and in the planning stages at this point, but it's tremendous. So I'm in wholehearted support of sort of improving our public service with regards to just the basic stuff. If people are doing simple things like getting their bathroom remodeled, they shouldn't have to wait to get their permits to carry on that work. So I'm excited for this, and I think it's a great idea.
Any other questions or comments from the board tonight? Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah, I just want to agree with Matt. There's an extent to which we are in the customer service business to a certain degree. And the planning department is one of the departments in the town that people, it's a point of contact for the public. And when it gets behind, reputations can start where Grafton just apparently doesn't care. Well, it's not the case. It's been a really tough year. Some of our departments are overwhelmed and understaffed. And I think this is a good step forward to try and get that department back on track.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I just want to concur from my other board members too, Mr. Broussard. I'm happy to see this appointment tonight to assist. I know, and I fielded some calls from residents concerned about the length of time it takes to get these permits, and understand that it can be a complex process. But I know Mr. DeSantis is no stranger to Grafton. He's worked here before in this capacity. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the department get caught up and stay caught up. If more importantly, to keep the business flowing of our contractors who come here and work and depend on their livelihoods in our town. To what Mr. Frisbee and Mr. Hoffman has said, that this is a customer service part, and this allows people to move on with their dreams and their projects and their improvements to their homes or their repairs or whatever it may be. But I'm pleased to see this move tonight. If there isn't any other further questions or comments on the board, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to affirm the appointment of Ronald DeSantis as a temporary hire in the position of a local building inspector.
Second.
Motion made and seconded for the temporary hire. Is there any discussion on the appointment? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Mr. Frisbee?
Frisbee, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. So we don't have any new business tonight. We want to hold off on select board reports until the next week, or do we have any that need to be mentioned tonight, or if it can wait? But Mr. Broussard, did you have any TA reports you wanted to give tonight, or you want to hold off for next week?
I can do them this week or next week, whatever your pleasure is.
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
You got some stuff on the tip of your tongue.
Well, Joanne put this on the agenda, and I'm terrified to go back and tell her I didn't do it. So let's get this done. So budget update. I just want to keep everybody in the loop. We do have a little extra time because of the delay of town meeting. So we have been working with the finance committee to kind of square up our last little bits here. And so right now we're working very diligently on staff salaries, because we're in active negotiations with Grafton PD, with GMEA, as well as trying to work on stuff for our non-union staff. So we're really building those rosters. There doesn't appear to be a central housing of every employee, their rank, step, and grade It's a little all over the place. So we're trying to rein that in so that we know exactly what our costs are going to be. So we've been working very hard on that. I wanted to talk briefly about the American Rescue Plan. It's actually the American Rescue Plan Act. So you might have seen in the news that Grafton is slated to receive $5.5 million from ARPA. We also have a number floating around from the state at 1.8 million. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. There is some school only funding in there, and there's some other little caveats. So we're starting to really see that flesh out. We've started to get some guidance from the state. I did a webinar today from ICMA about this and how this is going to roll out. There's some really interesting things in it as far as restrictions and unrestricted funds. So if you are backfilling a deficit that you had from revenue in your municipal budget, you can use that money as unrestricted funding. Otherwise, it has to fit into these little pots. But most interestingly, I think that the money can be used as a quasi grant program for local businesses, nonprofits, and other entities that have been really hit hard by the pandemic. So knowing that, I've engaged William to look into kind of that thought process as well, because I think that if Grafton's going to receive $5.5 million, I don't think it's in anyone's best interest to just try to absorb that into the municipal budget. I think we need to do probably a layered approach and come to the board with a plan of what that looks like. And it just as serendipitously, William and I went to the Community Harvest Project, sorry, CHP, up on Brigham Hill there, and spent some time there with those folks and talking about their mission and how many people they try to feed and all of that, and was really kind of inspirational to the two of us. So I think we're going to try to develop a plan in conjunction with various boards and committees of how to make any ARPA money really have the best impact in the community, and make a recommendation to you folks of how to divvy that out. And lastly, S&P gave us our bond rating this week. We are now listed as AA+ stable, which was great. They have a comment in there about how stable our management is, which I thought was awesome, since we told them we had been there for 3 weeks, and they still gave us that rating, so that was great. And so right now it looks like we're on track when we go out to rebond and bring that back to you folks for, I believe, your next meeting, April 6th. Looks like the savings that we're anticipating is about $735,000 right now. It's a little bit down from where we were projecting, but bond rates have been slipping up. So, it is what it is, but I still think that, $750,000 is good savings for the residents of Grafton.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. Mr. Hoffman, do you have a question?
Yeah, just I'm wondering, that 735 obviously is in the dollar amount, but in terms of what is that going to mean for our debt service year over year?
I think that the average taxpayer will save $6 a quarter.
Okay. I thought it would be something like that.
It's really not sexy, but it's
No, I get it, but look, every little bit helps, and it's you've got to build those blocks one at a time. That's a good perspective. That number always seems big. Oh my God, $250,000, that's amazing, or $750,000. Yeah. All right.
Right. And it's all override, so it doesn't really impact that refi doesn't impact the municipal budget. It's not like we have X number of dollars now to put towards debt service. It's right off of the taxpayers roll, which again, $6 is $6.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on Mr. Broussard's reports tonight? Real quick, Mr. Broussard, when you mentioned a budget deficit, to backfill a budget deficit, is that just for specific line items, or is it for the whole, just if you're in the red?
Right. So what happened in a lot of communities is their receipts dropped out. So people couldn't make their tax payments, whatever it is. So their revenues decreased. And so what this is allowing you to do is take that money and put it towards your revenue decrease. And so I'm assuming that Grafton will be able to use some of that money in that way. I don't think that we're going to look at it in the cash windfall way that other communities did. Some communities out there were taking like a 14 to 15% hit in revenue. I know that one of my neighboring communities out west, literally 2 days after the pandemic started, they started seeing a decrease in revenue and weren't able to make payroll. That's how tight they were. So, there are communities that were impacted in that way. And I think they're gonna throw a big chunk of this money towards that structural deficit or that revenue deficit they had. We may be able to use some in that way, but not as much as many of our sister communities.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments from Mr. Broussard? All right, moving on. We have any correspondence tonight? I didn't see any. Ms. Roy, did we have any correspondence tonight?
Not that I saw.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you. All right, so next up here, we have on discussion tonight, and I know we have Chief Gauthier here as well. Maybe help us answer some questions and have a discussion with the chief, but talking about the Strong Chief charter change that's upcoming. I know we haven't voted on the final language yet for the ballot initiative for this spring, but I think it's important, given the time frame in which the board acted on from a meeting several weeks ago to a memo that we received from Chief Gauthier just the other week, really warranted to have this discussion with the board and the chief and the TA tonight. And talk about, hey, as we're approaching the Strong Chief provision and the duties and responsibilities that go along with it, discuss, with the board tonight, essentially just give us an idea for a structured conversation about, what is it that, we think we expect, what is it that we're going to get when this ballot comes. And I think there's two tracks I think, we need to talk about tonight. One is the ballot initiative passing, okay, this spring. And then, what does that change? Or what are the expectations? And I think the other talk track we need to talk tonight is, let's say for some reason it doesn't pass. And we really need to have a discussion tonight about, does it change anything? And how does it correlate with planning and moving forward or with the fire search committee? In addition to hiring our, the start dates and the timings of hiring our next fire department, fire chief here in Grafton. So I wanted to open this up to the board. This is the way I sort of structured this part of the conversation. Does anyone have any questions or want to start off with any part of this discussion first? Chief, did you have your hand up for a second ago or? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So I guess, one of the questions I have for tonight is, in the event, this does pass, I want to know, what does the board feel about, once the Strong Chief comes into position here in Grafton, it becomes a thing. How does the board feel about what we have in the MRI report and about actions in activities that need to occur moving forward? So I wanted to work this out with the board tonight to get their thoughts. My thoughts are, given the timeline with, Chief Gauthier retiring at the end of December instead of in the June, July timeframe, probably, I don't know, setting a date for certain things to really occur with that MRI report into the department, I think, are going to require some full-time staff in that position for not only supervision, but also providing leadership and direction. I didn't know how the board felt about it. Does anyone have any comments it wants to raise? or questions in general with the TA and the chief here tonight? Mr. Prisby.
Chair, thank you. You missed your calling as an attorney because that was a lot of words. I'm going to try and distill the issue here. We have been dancing around this for quite some time now, Chief Gauthier, and thank you for coming tonight. The MRI report recommended a number of changes. Some of those changes required new hiring, and since the MRI report has come out, that new hiring has not happened. And it's my understanding, based on the conversation that we had, that this group had the last time you were here, was that you wanted to move on sooner rather than later, and that June was your thing. We were going to move into the strong chief paradigm in the summertime after July 1, and that would allow the new chief to pick new personnel, which at the time, I think you had agreed with us that was important, that whoever was going to come on would want to pick their own people. And if we can all agree that choosing the new chief, choosing their own people is important, and that this staff is going to be important to public safety in Grafton, I wonder if we're not moving in the wrong direction, big picture, on public safety by altering the plan at this point. So I guess look, from my perspective, you're sort of like the fire department's Tom Brady, where you've sort of earned your right to tell us when you're moving on. But at the same time, we've all got a job here, and we've set the ball in motion based on what you told us the last time you were here. So now I'm kind of wondering why our collective logic, mine and yours, was wrong the last time you were here and what changed. And if you could speak to that, that would be helpful.
Okay. A lot of things have happened over the last 6 months, and I don't want to iron out any dirty laundry. I mean, I'll gladly talk to you one-on-one if you want, things that had happened. But I met with Evan and I met with Peter back on March 18th, and we discussed it. And we decided I would stay on. You could get the process going. You wouldn't have to rush it to get it for July 1st. You can move it a little slower, but start the process now. We also discussed about the second position. But before we start that, the first position, the fire prevention officer, it took us 2 years to hire the fire prevention officer. We found we have a firefighter. He's doing a fantastic job. I mean, he's got a lot of work going on, and we got a great person doing it. We talked about the second position, and we came to a decision, the three of us, that we would move forward with that second position. Evan and I would sit down, and we'd come up with a job description and get that out. And I would have him work under the fire prevention officer because he needs some supervision. So now that's our plan, to get that second person. We would come up with a job description. He would be charge of training, and we'd like to get him into fire education, charge of fire education in the schools and for seniors, but also work with the fire prevention officer, because I need that second person, or the fire department needs that second person. So when the fire prevention officer has a day off or takes vacation, inspections still have to be done, so that person can fill in and do that. So that's our plan. Like I said, I mean, there was things going on, which I don't want to discuss in public. But I did agree to stay, that I would stay till the end of December, or whichever the town sees fit. I mean, that's up to the town, but I just, I'm throwing it out there that I would stay. You could get the process going. Doesn't have to the chief wouldn't have to be here by July 1st, because I've heard discussion talking about getting the consultant in. It could take a few months. I'm willing to stay. And if you hire a chief prior to, me leaving in December, and he wants to start right then and there, then I will step down as the chief and maybe stay on as a consultant to go through with him, whatever it takes to get through this transition. I mean, I'll do this. So that's where I'm at. That's where I am at that, at this point.
Mr. Alton?
Yeah, Chief Gothier, I can't say enough about how much I respect everything that you've done for the town and your willingness to kind of participate in the transition process and support the recommendations in that study. I guess I just want to be crystal clear that I think that the hiring process has to take the time that it takes, and I'm not necessarily in any rush to have somebody here on July 1st. We need to, hire the right firm, get the search committee organized, make sure they have everything that they need, and then take the time that we need to get the right candidates in to make a good hire and whatnot. So to me, I'm not married to the July 1st date whatsoever. And I appreciate your willingness to sort of support moving forward with as much of this as we can. But my perspective, we've had this study in hand since 2018. We put together a fire study recommendation committee that's delivered their recommendations. We have those in hand. I think everybody supports those. Everything that I heard from all of the volunteers earlier in our meeting was in strong support of moving forward with this transition plan. And so for me, I think we need to roughly stick with what we outlined and put wheels in motion for, which is hiring the search firm, allowing them to work with the search committee, and working through things, as quickly as is feasible, making sure that we have a quality hire. And I think, Chief, if you're willing to have, I don't think it's going to make sense to have a long transition period. I won't speak for the new chief, but my guess is that he's going to want to come in and, similar to having authority over his hires, he's going to want to institute his own program of training and retention, and he's going to have his own way of directing things and managing things, and it's going to be very, very difficult, I think, with if there's a long transition. So if we think about the timing on this, if we're now in April, I don't think we're going to be in a position to hire somebody on July 1st, frankly. I think we heard earlier that, Paradigm has sort of backed their proposal into our timeline. I think if we're thinking about the timelines, maybe extending another few weeks or a couple months beyond that, we're talking, I don't know, July, August timeframe before we actually select a candidate, and then maybe another month or so before they're actually able to start. If we're talking September 1st timeframe, and then maybe a few weeks, maybe a month transition. To me, that timeline works. I guess so. Chief, if you're willing to work with that kind of timeline, I would personally love for you to continue working with the fire department until December. But I think we're all conscious of the fact that you can only have one chief. So to just kind of say it candidly, at some point we're going to have a chief that we've hired under the strong provision. They're going to have operational management and budget control over the department. So, I appreciate your willingness to kind of support that plan. And I guess I'd just like to get your reaction on a timeline that looks like that.
Well, I guess, you tell me, and we'll make it work, I guess. If you want me, September 1st and then August 1st, whatever it is. I made an offer, but we want to move sooner, then we can move sooner. Just tell me and we'll go from there.
Mr. Prisby.
Yeah, like Matt said, it seems to me that it's unlikely that July 1 is going to be the date that we would have somebody ready. You know, I thought moved pretty swiftly in the TA search, and that was basically 6 months. We started in late August with finding the search team. We had a contract in September, and Evan's start date was supposed to be March 1st. And, you know, we sort of canoodled him out of his past job for February 22nd. But that you're talking about 5.5, 6 months. So now we're just about in April, and you're looking at maybe mid-September, October before you get somebody in. And that's just a couple months shy of your proposed 12/31. The results from the MRI report have been out for a while. It's our job to make sure that policy is implemented going forward that reflects the town's best interest and handle this in an expeditious fashion. And also at the same time to be incredibly sensitive and grateful to you for your service. So I think that if what you're saying is, if we can move along on the timeline that we've articulated, that you would be more than willing, and we thank you for staying on through that period. And then when the time comes, and we throw you an enormous party. You know, personally, not as like the board doesn't have a budget for a party, really. Not a good one anyway. But yeah.
Chief, I could take up a collection from the town, trust me, we'll be fine on that. Any other questions or comments from the board with these developments, Mr. Fazio?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chief Gothier. I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have said, but I pretty much agree with everything that's been said so far. And as the rep from the select board committee who'll be working on the screening committee, I want to thank you for allowing some more time to pick the right candidate, because I think we can all agree that picking the right candidate to follow a legacy like yours is the most important thing. And I was getting a little nervous that we had a timeline of July 1st based on our last conversation. And what you're giving us is the opportunity to really make sure that we have a good pool of candidates, that the people that have been appointed to this screening committee are able to look and make sure that this transition will be as smooth as possible. And so it's kind of hard to say right now, but I think, you know, if we continue to communicate with you on this is what the screening committee is thinking for a timeline, and I would not be surprised either if we end up picking a candidate that you know and that you've probably worked with, if not in Grafton, in another community, and that also respects the 49 years of service you've given to the town of Grafton. So I don't think that it's unreasonable to say that the new chief that we hire will also be part of the process in determining when the best day for you to step down and when that person is going to start. And I just think that this conversation needs to keep happening, and this communication needs to keep happening in order for you to do your job, Chief, as long as you're here, and for the board and our town administrator to do our job in moving Grafton in the direction we want to with this fire department as smoothly as we can. So thank you for that. And the other thing I'll say is I just have a question on, since you are staying on past June, what is your expectation, or if any, on when the strong chief provision comes into place? If it does, how do you envision that changing your role, if at all? And because that could be your role, you know, for up to another 6 months. And I just wanted to also have that conversation tonight.
You know, I've never thought of that, but I don't see anything changing. Like working with Evan, we have a good dialogue, we have a good open communications, and never even dawned on me about any of that. I mean, I just would continue. I thought I would continue to work with Evan, and we would go from there. I mean, so nothing would change on my aspect. I mean, the way I do things. I mean, so it was just, I guess, status quo or whatever until when the new full-time chief comes in. I mean, he's gonna do the things. My only question is, I mean, do you still want me to proceed hiring that second person at this point? Because we've had the discussion, but I mean, we don't know how long I'm gonna be here, so do we keep the process going and hire that second person right now to work, or oh, I'm a little baffled right now, so I don't know what to do.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, can I say something since I've kind of had Mike? Thank you. So I think that right now, my opinion is because you report into the TA and we have an MRI study, I think that the transition plan of having you work toward that position is a good one. But also, I think the committee will probably end up weighing in as well on more of a timeline in the next couple of weeks, and that will probably help make the decision as well. And also the strong chief provision may or may not have something to do with that. So I think that, you know, for me personally, I think moving ahead with our 2018 plan of the MRI report is important to do. And I was reflecting on this earlier today that your 49 years of service to the Grafton Fire Department is more time than most of these board members have been alive. And so when I think to myself, you have been serving the town's fire department longer than I have been on earth. I cannot imagine, I just can't imagine, and on so many levels. And so if you pick the next person, I think you're going to make a right decision because you know the town and you know the department very well. And so, you know, I think the new chief would respect that decision as well. So personally, I think we continue to move ahead. And if you'd be willing to make those decisions with our town administrator, I think it would be one less thing we would have to do. But again, right now you report technically to Evan, so.
I'm fine with that. I mean, keep moving on. I mean, we have to still serve the town of Grafton. So, yeah, it's something I've done all my life, and it's going to be tough not doing it. You know, I'm here one day, I'm gone the next, and it's over and done with.
So I would support that wholeheartedly, and I think, you know, what I'd like to see though is we have to have very deliberate, regular communication on this transition plan. So that's something that we as a board, and I think, you know, with we're even working with Carter, have consistently struggled with. So I think, you know, just I guess a message to Evan, please make sure that, you know, I don't want to be in another meeting like this where there's any commentary that anybody's out of the loop, whether it's the board, whether it's the fire chief, whether it's you, whether it's the fire department. We have to have open and proactive communications on this plan and everything that's happening. So let's just prioritize that consistent engagement to just make sure that nobody misses any part of the process or feels like they've been left out in any way. It's just, it can't happen going forward.
I may add one thing. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Prisby and then Ms. Roy. I saw your hands go up.
Yeah, you know, I usually don't like repeating what somebody else says because I think it's a waste of time, but sometimes you got to highlight a point. Look, you know, last time we were here and one of the stations said they hadn't figured out that they needed to apply. It seemed like a miscommunication, but, you know, it takes two parties to communicate here. And I got to tell you, Chief Gauthier, when I get the memos every week, whether it's from Carter or now it's from Evan about departments checking in, The fire department line is always blank. All right. And, you know, things are changing a little bit as far as communication goes. And everybody needs to be on the same page here. Like Matt, I don't want to have this conversation again about people not being able to communicate. We live in the age of communication. It is the easiest time in the history of human existence on the planet to communicate back and forth. Text messages, emails, telephones. It's not too hard if in-person meetings are out of the question, even during COVID. So please, let's not have that portion of the conversation again.
That's right.
When we hired Paradigm to do our TA search, we had them come in and present to the board after the fact, and they did a little presentation and they broke down their timeline. Can we do that with BadgeQuest? And that can help give us that clarity of what the timeline is going to be beyond 4 to 5 months, so that we have this, instead of just this floating date where the chief says, yeah, when you get somebody else step down, and it's still not this concrete plan where things can shift and change and create more issues where we just don't want any more issues.
Yeah, Mr. Fazio.
Yeah, thanks to Ms. Roy's point. I was also going to mention that I think it would be maybe helpful during these discussions that the screening committee provide an update very similar to sort of what the departments are doing, and make sure that the board is aligned with the process, but also that Chief Gauthier is aligned with the process and decisions being made, and the timeline. Once that's talked about, we'll have a clear vision of an end date. But like I also mentioned, there is this possibility that we hire someone that Chief Gauthier knows, and they're part of the decision process as well. And, you know, like, and it could be like anything, like you use the example of someone buying your house, and your closing date can change if, you know, kids are finishing off a school year, or somebody needs to move earlier. And so I think we do need at this point in time to continue to be a little bit flexible as far as, is it going to be September? Is it going to be December? Until we get the screening committee together and come up with a solid timeline from BadgeQuest. But I think I can help as far as, you know, having the screening committee come up with some sort of memo or update along with a meeting minutes every week too, just to kind of keep everybody in the loop.
Okay. We'll work on that for a future meeting. Any other questions or comments on the board? Okay. If there isn't anything else, Chief, do you have anything for us?
Nope, not at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming in tonight. I appreciate you clearing that up. I guess, you know, to Mr. Often and Mr. Prisby's point, you know, let's not get back here from, you know, a lack of communication. I'm in full agreement with my whole board, and I'm sure you are too, and Mr. Broussard. We need to be, you know, on a regular cadence with developments as things are progressing here. So that way there's no surprises coming up. If there isn't anything else, I want to thank you for coming in tonight. Again, I think I've said every time you've come to our meeting, thank you for all your years of service, Chief. And appreciate you taking the time and meeting with Evan and I the other week to get to this point here in this meeting. Appreciate your candidness and your composure. I know this is a very sensitive thing for you, and I just want to let you know that we all feel similarly to you, that we know that this is it's very sensitive for you as well, and the whole department and the town. Thank you for coming in. At this point, you know, we have next up on our committee tonight. Let's discuss the search committee charge and see if we need to make any revisions to it based on the conversation that we had with the chief tonight. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the only thing that I would change necessarily is the timeline. So I think, June 1st is a little too aggressive. I wouldn't want to rush the committee and the agency in their work. And I think, as I've said earlier tonight, the process is going to take how long it takes. And I think we can certainly give direction that we want to move as aggressively as is reasonable, but I do not want to compromise the quality of the candidates or the process that they undertake to arrive at a good decision. That this is one of the most important hires we're going to make. So I would recommend that we just change the June 31st to as soon as possible. And then just talk to the firm that we hire about a target date, and we could have a target date of August 1st or, whatever this board thinks is reasonable.
So my thought on that, before Ms. Roy even comment, I would like to see something in the charge that says by a date no later than, and work backwards from there versus ASAP. To your point, Chief Gauthier is kind enough to, stay on board to, get us past that July 1st. I know that deadline was looming. A lot of us had some concerns about meeting that expectation. So I don't know how the board feels about that. Ms. Roy?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Kind of marry the idea of as soon as possible, but no later than, November 1st. If we know that December 31st is our drop dead date, we can't have anything come in that late. And I'm sure Badge Quest has a process, right? Paradigm had a very detailed process. I have to imagine Badge Quest will have something similar. It's great to give them breathing room, but I highly doubt that they're going to want to do things for 7 months just because they can do things for 7 months. So that's why I asked to have them come in, just so we can get a better feel for their process, which will help give us some clarity on the rest of this.
I mean, with that notion, maybe perhaps we wait for the Badge Quest and the search committee to meet, have that discussion, and then to your point, Ms. Roy, come in and maybe we make the change to the date then based on their recommendation. Does that seem reasonable, or does anyone else have another thought? No? Okay. Okay. I see thumbs up. Okay. There we go. All right, that works for me. I guess at that point, then we'll hold off on this. I will have this on our task list going forward, just so we know that we will be bringing the search committee in. I'll be working with the whoever the chair is in the firm to make that happen soon. Once we get the committee formed and get them organized, then they can get back to us on their timeline when they feel that they'll be ready to give us a date, which I would encourage them to come sooner rather than later. If that's all we have remaining tonight, we have really nothing else to discuss. I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made a second to adjourn. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often.
Often aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Ms. Prisby.
Aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening. We will see you next week. Thank you.